fever would surely recur unpredictably over a period of years, perhaps for as long as she lived. Nora's vague dreams of a home and family died. She had never found men very attractive physically, but she had wanted children. Now that seemed impossible. How could she raise a child when she was subject to a recurring fever that might one day prove fatal? Her dreams of adventure died as well. She had wanted to go down the Amazon River in South America and to see the pyramids in Egypt. But faced with recurrences and the terrible fever, she was afraid to take the risk. As much as she craved travel and adventure, she valued her health more. So she led a remarkably placid life for the next year and contented herself with recalling her African adventure for her friends, who were impressed by her courage and daring. Inevitably, her exploits were exaggerated, and she became known as an adventuress. At times, she enjoyed the reputation it gave her for daring, even if it wasn't quite accurate. She was lauded as a prime example of the modern woman. She was asked to speak at women's suffrage rallies and afternoon charity teas. She rested on her laurels. Now she was being invited out west, to a fabled land she'd read about and always dreamed of seeing, a region that was as potentially wild as Africa. Her fever had not recurred for several months. Surely there would be no risks out west, and hopefully she would remain healthy for the duration of her visit. She could see something of the Wild West, and perhaps there would be an opportunity to shoot a buffalo or meet a desperado or a real Indian. She stood with brimming excitement at the lace curtains of the family parlor in Virginia, looking out at the pretty late summer landscape while she fingered the letter from her Aunt Helen with delight. There were 4 Tremaines of East Texas, her Uncle Chester, her Aunt Helen, and her cousins Coulter and Melissa. Coulter was on an expedition to the North Pole. Melissa was desperately lonely since her best friend had married and moved away. Aunt Helen wanted Nora to come and spend a few weeks on the ranch in East Texas and help cheer Melly a little. Nora had once taken the train to California and had seen the rugged country between the Atlantic and Pacific through the window. She had read about ranches and Texans. They both sounded romantic. Dashing cowboys fighting Indians and one another, rescuing women and children and making all sorts of heroic sacrifices, paraded through her mind as she recalled the old Beetle dime novels she had been reading of late. She would meet a real cowboy if she went to visit her kinfolks on the ranch. And it would be an adventure, even if it didn't involve lions and hunters. It would be a great adventure, and she would have a second chance to test her courage, to prove to herself that she wasn't crippled by the African fever that had kept her confined so long. "What have you decided, dear?" Cynthia Marlowe asked her daughter as she scanned the latest issue of Collier's magazine. Nora turned, the soft material of her lacy blue dress swirling gracefully around her trim ankles. She touched the fashionable big tulle bow at her throat with fingers that almost shook with excitement. "Aunt Helen is very persuasive," she said. "Yes, I should like to go. I look forward to seeing the majestic nights of the range that my novels describe." Cynthia was amused. She hadn't seen Nora so enthusiastic about anything since her disastrous trip to Africa. Her daughter's chestnut brown hair in its elegant high coiffure caught the light from the window and took on the sheen of copper. Cynthia's hair had been that color when she was younger, before it went silver. But Nora also had the deep blue eyes of the Marlowes and the high cheekbones of a French ancestor. She was taller than her mother, but not unusually tall. She had elegance and grace and manners, and a gift for conversation. Cynthia was deeply proud of her. Nora was peculiarly cool with men, especially after the fright Somerville had given her and the dreadful illness that had plagued her. She would really have thrived on the adventurous life, Cynthia thought sadly, but the African fever had clipped her wings. Now, at 24, she had settled down to spinsterhood with resignation. "Among other things, this visit would at least give you respite from your father's attempts to bring socially acceptable young men home for you," Cynthia murmured, thinking out loud. Her husband had, in fact, made himself painfully obvious of late, and he tended to be overbearing and a little insensitive. Nora laughed without real humor. A man in her life was the very last complication she needed.